Welcome back, everyone, to Merge Conflicts, your weekly developer podcast, talking about all things in the world of technology. I'm one of your hosts, James Montemagno. With me, as always, the one and only big Prime Deals a Day guy, Frank Kruger himself. How's it going, buddy?
Oh, are you jinxing me? Am I going to have to buy Prime stuff now? It's going wonderful, James, all the way up until I spent 10 grand on Prime Day. How did I do that? How many dinguses do I need
Well,
for
they
that to
got
get
me back
busted?
in, Frank. We canceled our Amazon Prime, and then it's Prime Days deals, and we actually legitimately needed something. Heather needed a case for her iPhone. She likes just a very generic, like clear case, like little bumper almost. And she like picked out one. It was like $10. I was like, oh, is there any Prime Day deals? I was like, I need some new headphones because my little earbuds, they're like broken. I buy like, $15-20 ones. And I want to
Nice.
get these CF2 or whatever. They're by Nothing, the brand. And they're like on sale for $20 instead of like $50, but you gotta be a Prime member. I was like, ugh.
Ugh,
I
that's
was
how
like,
they
let
get
me
you.
let me see. Maybe I can do a month, right? It'd be worth it because you'd save $30, $20 in between the stuff. I was like, let's do a little order. And then they're like, hey, for 7 days, $2, you can become a Prime member
Oh,
again. I was
yeah?
like, okay. I was like, okay, well, Friday I'm canceling Bezos, so I'm dipping out of this thing. So, but I said, I'll give you $2, but I'm gonna save $40 over here. So it makes
Just
logistical sense. I totally forgot, but we just literally happened to be looking at it because Heather's phone comes tomorrow. So
that, yeah, I'm usually the caseless person, but I do like to have a wallet on my phone so that when I lose
mm,
my phone, I lose both things simultaneously. It's more efficient to lose both things at the same time. So,
it makes sense. That makes sense. Logistical sense, right? I mean, why potentially just lose one thing when you can lose your entire life and identity? I mean, most of it's in the phone anyway. So, you know.
yeah, it's true. Surprisingly, you still need cards once in a while, though. Like, have you been that person where you're like tapping your phone against the machine, and then like there's a good 5 second beat, and then the clerk's like, "Yeah, we don't have that." And you're like, "Oh, sorry,
I've done the
I'm a
thing
little
where
stupid."
I go cycling and I like accidentally leave my wallet at home. Like, oh, I got to go to the
Mhm.
store. I'm just like, fingers crossed, fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Please, please accept it. Right. But there's this
Yeah.
other time where I forgot, like, I didn't have my phone or my wallet, and then I had just have my
Okay.
watch. And I was like,
Oh God.
please. I was like, did I set it up? Did I set? And then like,
What
I
credit
didn't.
cards are on here?
I didn't set it up, and I was like, oh, sorry, can't buy this. And I was like, but yeah, it's very, very complicated. So funny. Uh,
Uh, Sorry, I know everyone is very fascinated by our purchasing habits. So I just want to tell you, I might have to buy a new Apple Watch because I got a wonderful upselling message from Apple the other day. I was trying to enable some fun feature for their workout app. I think it was like Workout Buddy or something silly like that.
ah.
And it's all like, hey, once you upgrade your watch to watchOS 26, you'll be able to turn this on. And I'm like, funny, I never got an option to upgrade my watch to watchOS 26. And it turns out my fifth generation watch just isn't cutting it anymore. That and the fact the battery only lasts 7 hours. So I think finally, I'm going to have to become a watch upgrader. But I barely use the watch. So I am in the market for the cheapest possible Apple Watch I can get these days that'll still get the iOS 26. I'm hoping the watch version 10 has gotten cheap these days, or maybe an SC or something like that.
That's a good question. Heather and I both have the SE. We both had the Series
Mm.
3, and then mine died, if you remember, in a blaze of glory. It is a great question. I agree. I feel like the watches should last forever, and then they don't.
Yeah.
So SE3 is 250, and that'd be but like that's even expensive. You get
It's tough though, like
SE2
two 99 and gives you the like Series 11, I think though. So it's tough.
399, bro.
399. Never mind. Never mind. Don't listen to me, everyone. I haven't shopped for the cheapest possible yet. Yeah.
Yeah,
So 250. See if I can be 250.
I think if you yeah, Apple Watch SE2. Like, I'm wondering if the SE2 might be like the one to get if it's a good deal. 229 says that's not 209. Okay, I
It's
see.
tough. Tough
Oh, I
choice.
see.
Okay.
You can get the Apple Watch on sale right now on bestbuy.com, 229 for the Series 3
Hopefully not.
250, 209. I don't know. We're like a 150 type. That's what we got ours. We got, Black
Oh,
Friday deal.
nice. Very good.
But ours did get Watch OS. I know Series 3 did not, but maybe you could find one, Series, 2 or
Yeah.
something like that. I don't know, maybe Prime Day deals. But Yeah, it is a bummer. One thing that of interest before we actually got into our topic tonight, talking about Apple, is I have that little CarPlay display
Hmm.
in my car,
Hmm. Yeah,
uh,
custom display, custom
custom
unit thing.
display, and CarPlay has adopted liquid glass, as you could imagine.
Kind of, yeah, sure, yeah. They put glowy borders on everything. It's not the glass effect though.
Not the glass effect, but more glowy borders, things like that. The interesting part of the whole thing is that just like on macOS, they love rounded corners. They're like, we know what we
Yeah.
love, a rounded corner. So on my
Yeah.
display, which is a normal display, we're talking a 7-inch display, perfect rectangle. I
Mm.
noticed today on my drive, it's the entire OS
Yeah.
has rounded corners. So literally you can see the dead pixels, like the feathered
Oh, you
dead
see
pixels.
them.
You see it because it's like, there's the border of the screen, so it's like black and then a different black of the LCD, and then I was like, oh, Apple. I was like, you're just
Tacky.
wasting precious pixels.
Yeah.
It's just like right now on Mac OS, I have my Edge here, right? And it has a rounded corner. Everything has rounded corners.
Mhm.
You're wasting precious pixels. I know they'd just be filled with nothingness, but there's something to me,
I
Apple. So,
Well, now that we're into glass complaint corner, I've been working on my apps, and the new pop-up dialogues in the apps have super big corner radiuses, as in big, big circles, bigger than the corner radius on like the device itself. So this is them really saying something, and it's clipping all sorts of objects like in the UI. So like I had a popover that had a text box at the bottom, and now just the edge of the text box is clipping against that giant corner radius. That corner radius is not replicated anywhere else on the physical unit, but they decided giant radiuses everywhere. So I'm having to add padding everything. Remember how we were talking about it feels like there's just less room in all these apps? It's because you have to add like 30-40 pixels of padding to everything so that it's not touching the corners. And I was just kidding. That's my entry for this week's episode of complaining about glass is the giant, giant corner radiuses.
well, I guess I was going to talk about something completely different. We can talk about designing for glass because I did install Calca
Mm,
on both Mac OS and
cool.
iOS
Nice.
26s in general. And what a
Hmm.
different experience between them. Just night and day difference because obviously a Mac app is a Mac app. I mean, this inherently, what's interesting about this is that, you know, your Mac app is a Mac app, not a Mac Catalyst app, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's also not an iPhone app running on the Mac OS, right? So inherently you've designed these applications completely different for the input, which I appreciate.
Hmm.
Interestingly enough, like when you open Calca on Mac, it just like opens a file picker, which is actually kind of hilarious, actually.
It's Yeah, I don't love that actually, but it's the standard way that document-based Mac apps work.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't really love it. And I might change that up in the future, but yeah, if you notice every single one of Apple's apps does the exact same thing. QuickTime being the most notorious.
QuickTime is right there, and I was comparing it side by side. And what happens when you open it? It has the QuickTime folder, it's the iCloud folder, bingo bango, you're good to go. It's very
Mhm.
jarring if you like open an app for the first time, and maybe you've a walkthrough, I don't know, but no, it's
Mhm.
exactly what happens. Whereas on, um, you know, iOS, it's a
iOS.
very different experience all up for Calca. It's a completely different application in general
Yeah.
in my mind. I mean, it does similar functionality, but I guess when you went through this upgrade, because this is the only app I think that you've upgraded to 26 that's in the store, correct?
Yes. Yeah. The old apps upgraded. Yes. I have other. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
pupil one we talked about is 26, but yeah.
And we talked a little bit about designing that, but yeah, I think when you're thinking about the liquid glass, because there's a surprising amount of animations in the liquid glass and a lot of bubbles.
Mhm.
And when I open up Calca on macOS, there's nothing. It's just a text editor. It's
Hey,
literally
buddy,
just a
here's a
text
text
editor.
edit. Yeah.
Here, buddy, here's a text editor. Give me $5.99. Um, But on the phone, it's a very sort of different experience. Like, how did you actually like figure out how to design these two paradigms when it came to this, or did you not? You're just like, hey, listen, it's like native controls and it's good, or like was there a lot of thinking process into actually redesigning it? And I ask this because I'm going through the process right now of updating the skiing app, which we talked about last week. And I have not actually run it on iOS 26 yet because I only
Mm-hmm.
ran it on Android on my Windows machine. And I couldn't get my build working yet because, as you said, Net 9, iOS 26 is the config, but I'm targeting Net 10 because I want to be ahead of the curve. But the problem is I'm using .NET 10 API, so I can't
Oh
compile for
boy.
.NET 9. So I got to wait for RC2, but it's coming next week. So it doesn't even
Okay.
matter. Whatever, it's happening. But I will soon be running my applications on iOS 26 with
Yeah.
Liquid Glass. And my actual other question too is you're making these changes for Liquid Glass. So inherently, are you also having to retroactively think about iOS, whatever the last version was, iOS 25, which wasn't the version, I forget what it is now, but you do know what I mean? Like
Oh
inherently,
yeah.
we haven't had this much of a change where it's like, oh, the entire application, it's not like Android where there's like a back compat library. It's like, it's going to look completely different on not iOS 26.
Yeah. I'm definitely going through this right now. So, but we can talk about Calca first. But I'm going through this with iCircuit right now. iCircuit's kind of my
Mm,
flagship product. So, Calca was a little bit of my practice. But addressing the platform issues, that was always kind of important to me. But I do have a debate constantly of what should the Mac UI be, because my original goal with Calca was to be just a text editor, like a text editor, text edit on the Mac is kind of its role model, but any any classic Mac text editor, I don't want all the all the silliness that comes with IDEs and all that. Like, it should be a clean, fast app that pops up and you focus on the content, the thing that you're making, not on all these widgets and animations and all that stuff. This has always been kind of a power app for power users. And
yeah.
that's always been the Mac thing of like clean, simple, it shows you the content, gets out of the way. It's not like it doesn't show the plots by default unless you use a plot. Then it'll bring up the plot dialogues and things like that. So that was always the design goal on Mac, and I've kept that up to this point. iOS is a different beast. It's number one. Back in the day, you there were no file managers. There was no file system or anything like that. So I built a whole document management UI that the
Yeah.
app defaults into these days. And that's kind of your introduction to it. And then once you have one of those, you want to have like your examples doc, your reference doc, and things like that. Those things get hidden away in the Mac app. They're up in the file menu. You can get to them, but they're by default kind of hidden away from you. And that's really, yeah, that's the two platforms just being different from each other. You just present things differently. Both apps have basically identical functionality, but they present themselves very differently. That said, I do constantly have debates of Apple has set a new standard with the Notes app. And I keep wondering if I should be mimicking the Notes app instead of the old text editor apps.
Hmm.
I love the old text editors, but the times do a change. And so there might be a Coca 2 in the future. I don't even know if I want to like force that UI onto people. So I constantly have debates with Coca.
I think like with, if you look at the app store, which you need to update your photos of your app, but there's a lot of toolbar now. There's a lot of toolbar things happening for like font
Hmm.
sizes. There's a lot of toolbar things for graphs and things like that. How are you grappling with the changes specifically to the toolbar and how you think about that, and even also designing what that you know picker looks like as far as like the document picker, right? Because before there's a lot of non-rounded corners, right? Did you go through any systematic changes and updates, or did you just recompile and go?
Well, it's funny. So the picker right now is pretty much my old-fashioned one in that it's square corners and flat design kind of stuff. It went through that transition back with iOS 7. It used to actually be very skeuomorphic in the iOS 6
Mm,
days, but then I simplified it for iOS 7. Hilariously, between then and now, Apple actually did introduce its own file management UI. It's called the UI Document Browser, and iCircuit has adopted that. So the nice thing about UI Document Browser is you get all the bubbly, glassy kind of stuff, and basically for free. I don't think their UI is that great. It looks a lot like the Files app. And so, very much like in macOS, when you open the app, it brings up, and this is obviously what Apple's thinking, it brings up the open dialog. On iOS, when you open the app, it brings up the document browser dialog. It just happens to be better looking on iOS than it
Yeah.
is on Mac. It's funny because like I can hear them in the meetings. Oh, this is what we do here, and look how consistent it is. But your file open dialog just isn't that good looking, Apple. It's just not. And so I always have this debate in Kelka whether I should switch between the dialogues, switch up to the new version or not. But there's just advantages to my current document browser. The way I manage documents, the way I generate thumbnails. The thumbnail generation on Apple stuff is hit or miss, to be honest. Sometimes you get thumbnails correctly, sometimes you don't. And I think it just looks terrible when you don't get the thumbnails correctly. And so I'm always having another debate with myself of is it time to finally swap out that editor or not? But I don't know. It's serving me well. Out of all the emails I get from users, no one really complains about the document picker. I think it's battle tested. It's been there for years. It works fine. My biggest complaint is sometimes it shows a spinner for a couple seconds, and that annoys me while it's waiting for like iCloud to sync and things like that. But overall, I did not revamp the document picker for this one. But the main editor, I had to because of the toolbars, and we can talk about those if you want.
Yeah. Well, I think, are you then the one thing of interest, like, are you also like testing on older hardware too when you do this? Like, are
Yes.
you just doing it locally on simulator? Are you doing it on devices? Like, how do you test? Because I do feel as though they are like, it's hard to say. Like, I feel like on the Notes app, on the Notes app on Mac, there's like buttons for days. Like, they're like, here's a
Yeah.
1,000 buttons on the toolbar, right? But then there's like there's like literally on I open it up on the toolbar, there are legitimately two triple dots, two
Yeah.
triple
Two.
dots, and they're different sizes and different places. And I bet
Yeah.
there could be more if you make it like small, you know what I mean? And then there's like, if you collapse it down, that goes away and there's like an overview. It's very fascinating, right? But I do feel like on the phone, they try to minimize that, right? They're like, okay, like there's only going to be one on the top right, one on the top left, then only
Mm-hmm.
on the bottom, like maybe a few things down there. Like, did you have to make those changes? And how are you testing that
Oh
backwards?
yeah.
Because if you actually change, you're moving the cheese, right? And I feel like Apple's has been kind of moving some of the cheese around.
Yeah, thankfully, Kelka was a little bit easier because I'm thinking about iCircuit. iCircuit is where I've had to make the most hard decisions. Kelka was a little
Mm.
bit easy because I think there were four-ish toolbar buttons and maybe one or two navigation buttons. So top versus bottom, that's all those things mean. For Coca, it felt actually kind of pleasant and nice because like they have nice grouping with the glass things. Look, I said something good about glass. And
Yeah.
so instead of showing the toolbar background, you rely on the grouping of the buttons to kind of create a chrome effect for where these things are living. Originally, when I did a first build, it was individual buttons. So each button was a little circle, its own nice little glass effect circle, but it looked weird. Like it looked like five little buttons at the bottom, and it lacked grouping because I'm a micromanager and I used to put like pixels of space between certain buttons. But now iOS 26 picks that up as meaning don't group these buttons, put them into separate groups, and then it does a whole layout. So you really learn to put like all your toolbar buttons physically next to each other and then rely on iOS 26. So yeah, both my apps, Coca and iCircuit, target iOS 12 still.
Wow.
Mostly because I still rock an iPhone 6 as one of my main test devices. And as long as I can compile for iOS 12, I am going to keep supporting it because, you know, customers, maybe they're still living that iPhone 6 life. And if it's not the worst and hardest thing for me, I will keep supporting it. So some of my other apps I've bumped up to iOS 13, which knocks this device off the list. And my general rule is I design for the most modern operating system and then make sure it's still functional on the old systems. So maybe it's not as pretty because maybe I lose some colors or some defaults or changes that I had to make for iOS 26 will affect them. But my general rule is you got to keep your apps looking modern and adapting to the modern operating system. So from a design perspective, I'm always targeting the newest thing. And then I'm for backwards compatibility, just making sure it's still functional and works. Maybe it gets a little bit uglier or something like that. And I hate that, but it's still functional, still working, no crashing. My code is rife with if iOS this version. In fact,
Gonna
I was
ask.
joking. I had a tweet like I still had iOS 7 checks in a lot of my code because a lot of this code is very old, and I've been dealing with the platform changing ever since version 2. I've had is iOS 3 checks that I only removed a few years ago. And this is just iOS programming to me. Like you I'm different from Apple. I like supporting the old stuff. I think it's important to support the old stuff. And so I will put the effort in to design it all for the modern one, but then break out my old iPhone 6 and test her out.
Well, the other thing too is that, inherently, I don't know what the upgrade numbers are, but at least for the next several months, iOS 26 isn't even a recommended upgrade as
Oh,
far
yeah.
as like how they do it in the operating system. So when you go into your phone, it will say, hey, you go into the system updates and it's like, hey, there's a new iOS 18.7 dot whatever security patch, or you can upgrade to iOS 26 and you have to manually go press a different button that
Oh,
upgrades you.
okay.
So it's opt in, and that's how they always
Yeah.
do it, by the way. But I know
Okay.
you're cutting
Yeah,
edge.
I don't even know that part. Yeah.
So it's opt in. Now at some point in the future, I don't know when it happens,
hmm
they make the change that I think they put it up top and then they put the iOS like 18 on the bottom, right? They kind of like nudge you a lot faster towards upgrading basically to do it. But that means no matter if you only supported 18 and 26, you
hmm
still got to consider this, right? It doesn't matter it surprisingly doesn't matter how far back you go. Like the actual changes in the operating system and the UI design paradigm hadn't changed in so long, right? If you're 12 to 18, very similar paradigms, and now it's different. So, and there's some benefits to using native controls, right? Because the native controls will look and feel correct if you have a UI, a table view, like versus a
hmm
collection view, and the tab controller, like those are going to act correctly on the different operating systems. But it doesn't mean that you may not redesign parts of your application to be and adhere to liquid glass and that best. So I kind of like that approach of everyone will get there. Not everyone, but
hmm
most people eventually get
Yeah.
there. So don't hold back for it if you're going to go through this process. Um,
No,
that makes
especially
a lot of
because when they
sense.
do a big change like this, I'm sure there's going to be refinements on glass, but they're not going to backpedal completely. Like this grouping of toolbar buttons, which and the buttons taking up more space, that's not going to change in iOS 27. It's just not. There might be refinements. They might move things a pixel or two, but it behooves me to take the time now and make sure like all those groupings make sense. And yeah, like I had to do something sacrilegious with iCircuit. I had to move the plus button, one of the most important buttons that allows you to add elements to the app. I had to move it over so that the grouping would make a little bit more sense.
Mm,
iCircuit had the real problem of it has like depending on because it handles different size iPhones and all that kind of stuff. But if you have a big phone, I think it wants to put 8 buttons down there
wow.
at the bottom. Ideally, it wants to squeeze that many in. And if each button is not grouped, there's not space anymore. There used to be space. There's not space
Wow.
anymore. And so I really had to refine my groupings. And for that, I've really, and worse than that, James, a secret feature everyone just listening can know, but like I'm adding like more AI features to all my apps because it's free. It's there. It's fun actually to add these features. So I want to add another button to the thing. And so what am I gonna do? What you have to do is start grouping them and move a few things to the top that used to be at the bottom. And I hate that because, well, A, I hate redoing screenshots, but B, I hate moving things because I am that kind of person that like the plus button's always been in the bottom middle. Why would you ever move the plus button? That's where it belongs. That's where it lives. Well, it's not where it lives. It's gonna be off to the right a little bit now, and I'm doing that A because it looks better, B because it's functionally more normal, like it's bringing up a modality in the app, and it's all the buttons in that group change the modality of the app, so it makes a certain design sense and all that stuff. But I still hate moving it from a little bit to the left to a little bit to the right. And God, I don't know. Now I'm sounding like the worst kind of designer in the world. But these things matter when you're writing apps.
It matters a lot, and not all, surprisingly, if you actually look at a lot of Apple apps, like not all toolbar buttons, which are toolbar buttons and the tab buttons are the most prevalent glassy things, I would say, that you'll notice in every single application. But also those buttons aren't necessarily the same size. Like if you just open up iMessage, like especially on a Mac, where they actually have glassy buttons, funnily enough, I don't know if it's a Catalyst app or something, but it has a little FaceTime button in the top right, and that is a oval. It is not it's not a circle. Like they could have made it a circle, but they didn't. So inherently what I'm saying is like not all buttons are created equal, like in spacing and this and that, right? And it's really, really fascinating. If you actually dissect down the Apple screens, you will see that the top buttons are bigger than the bottom buttons in the toolbar. Like if you're in iMessage, like the button for like adding stuff or adding little emojis or whatever is a smaller button than the button in the top, right? And these things matter when inherently before I actually think that might have been exactly the same, but it didn't feel bigger, but it looks bigger because it's a very prevalent circle. Like it's more like the depth and the size of the buttons stick out more because of the like the embossing of it. You know what I mean? Just your eyes are drawn to it because there's the transparency layer, there's the rounded corners, there's the glassiness of it, the embossing inside of these, because it's this 3-dimensional to it. So your eyes are drawn towards it inherently there. And it's fascinating. I think also they did it in a lot of other areas. Like in iMessage, the person's face and their name and their location is underneath it. It's very big. It's like there's a lot of things. So making these decisions inherently means you have to think very specifically about sizes and locations, a thing that maybe you didn't really think about as much before, in my opinion. I don't know.
Oh, absolutely. The biggest culprit, if you want to say culprit, maybe not the right word, is the new done button.
Mm,
Um, So done has gone through a million different changes. Done is one of the most important buttons on the iOS. It's your dismiss, move me back to the old screen without a back button. You're in a modality versus pushed onto a stack versus the web
yep.
thing. Now the done button is this giant blue check mark. And not only is it giant, but it's visually distracting. If your app is just a bunch of text boxes and forms, it's fine. This is the obvious big done button. But if your apps are graphical like mine, there's this giant blue circle in the upper left completely distracting you from the content and everything. And from a designer point of view, balancing out that stupid button is hard. So in the top left, I have this giant blue done button, and I'm like, okay, so I need something to balance it in the top right. Only so your eyes aren't drawn to it as much.
Yeah.
Because if you have one big blue thing, you kind of look over at it. If you have two blue things in the top left and top right, you're like, oh, there's just some blue things up there. I'll ignore them. And that's what I want, actually. I want you focusing on the circuit, not these stupid buttons. And so thankfully I've even put a few embellishments on. I've always had a little toggle switch in the upper right is turn the circuit on, turn the circuit off. It's just been a cute little thing in iCircuit forever. And I've made sure like they really want to dim that down. They want to change it to like gray. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh no, you got to stay blue, just to balance out that
Yeah.
stupid giant blue button over there. Like I'm making sure that that thing is big, beautiful, and blue, so it's all balanced out. It's tricky.
It's fascinating because, you know, e- every app is a little bit different. So the skiing app, I actually made really intentional design choices with it to make it easier for folks that are maybe less cell phone, smartphone inclined. And what I mean by that is that Apple wants you to believe that everybody knows how to refresh something by
Right.
pulling down to refresh. And they would
Yeah.
also like for you to believe that everybody knows that you can swipe to delete. And inherently, people do not. Like, I, over the years, have what I think is like, um, like worst design decisions to help my users. And I'll give you an example of this is inside of the in two different apps. Inherently, this has both happened in the cycling app. There was the ability to like delete past rides, basically, and it's good old list view. By the way,
Well,
I know that
don't say
list view is
anything bad about List View.
no, I know list view is being deprecated in iOS in .NET 10.
In
They're
.NET,
marking it
yeah.
and they say collection view. Let me tell you, and I don't know what's happening in the world of UI kit. List view is the greatest thing that has happened to UI since ever. Is the best. It's just
Yeah.
grouping, swiping. It all makes sense. It's so good,
Hmm.
and obviously, like you see it being used everywhere in iOS 26. Like they're not using collection view in they cannot be. They inherently, I do not believe that they're using collection view in a bunch of places where you can swipe to delete and you see that big delete button, you see the thing. That's a list view. I'm 99% sure that's a list view. Okay. The UI list view is one of the greatest controls ever created, hands down. Collection view, too complicated. Too complicated. It's there for a reason, but I don't think it should be the default. That's my personal opinion. It's too complicated. List views, there's everybody needs a list. I'm looking at 20 list views right now on my screen. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, but you do need list views to be very smart, like the recycler view, and you need to optimize because things themselves can be complicated. Anyways, so inherently, one of the things that Apple does, and they still do this, is they actually have an edit button where you could swipe to delete because I know people don't know how to swipe to delete. Now, they could also make it so you could edit and then multi-select things, which would be very smart, but they don't even do that because the list view doesn't do that by default. It has a little red thing that you have to click on and then it deletes, blah, blah, blah. It's really silly, but anyways, it's there. So in the cycling app, I had to do that because someone's like, I would like, I was like testing it out and I have all these like fake rides. I'm like, oh, just swipe to delete. And they're like, oh, I would have never found that. So I had to add an edit button that brought it into mode.
Yeah.
Then the other thing is with the cycling app, there's two ways that I did this. There's of fixing this, but there's inherently just news and updates to it. And I have it the logic, which is like if you have like background of the application and you bring it back up and it's been like an hour or two or some amount of time, I refresh the content, right?
Yeah.
Just inherently, you
Smart.
can just, I do this in a lot of applications, just a little preference, shove it into the preference of the last update, open it on appearing. Okay. It's been a few hours, blah, blah, blah. I don't think I did this. I forget when I added into the app, but this is one of the things I added in the app, but maybe not on every single page. So I had someone complain. They said, "Hey, I opened the app and there has been no updates in 2 days." And I was like, "I don't understand." They're like, blah blah blah, and they didn't even know how to. The thing is, they also didn't understand swiping to close an application. I was like, "Oh, just force close the application and reopen
Oh,
it." And
I
they're like, "We don't
know.
know how to do
Yeah.
that. They don't know how to." So I said, "Oh, just pull to refresh."
Hmm.
Like pull it. And I even made a video like me pulling it. And they're like,
Hmm.
I never knew that you could do that. Right. Inherently,
Yeah.
we believe, and honestly, if no one's ever shown you pull to refresh, how are
Yeah.
they supposed to know that? It's not that there's tutorials like that I've seen very often. Maybe back in the day it was introduced, but clearly my demographics are all ages, right? Of all
Yeah.
different types that are used to technology. So what did I do? I put a big refresh button in the top right,
Heck yeah.
right? And you know what? I said, I'm not even going to put an icon. I'm putting the word refresh, the whole word,
Mm-hmm.
one whole word,
Mm-hmm.
baby, refresh. It's
Yeah.
only in English, so it'd be harder with multiple languages. But make it very clear you want to refresh the data. You can refresh the data. So inherently now I'm thinking, dang, I got like this big old button that says refresh.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to look really silly. You know what I mean? So I'm not really sure how to
Yeah.
handle that.
I would say you can put that at the bottom of the list or bottom
Hmm.
of the view also. I think there's a lot of standards around this stuff, and I think a lot of people are getting used to you get to the bottom or you're just looking around and there's a giant refresh button. I think that makes a lot of sense too. You just
Yeah.
know that you can go down there. And I don't want to be ageist at all because I've had kids using my apps, and as tech literate as kids are, they grew up with all this stuff. They just don't have the experience. They don't know
Yeah.
all these intricacies of 20 years of UI evolution and all that kind of stuff. So I know a lot of kids that don't even know these little tricks, even though they grew up with these things in their blood.
Yeah.
It, and you bring up the great point. Like I keep not putting that edit mode in, but I have to keep reminding myself, like, you just gotta do it.
Yeah.
It's not pretty. You don't love putting that edit button in there, but you just gotta do it. And it's funny. We keep learning the same lessons over and over. I just had someone asking me, "How do you delete this item in this list?" And I'm like, "Oh God." I mean,
Yeah.
it's swipe to delete. It's there. It's all
It's there.
just swipe. But I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry. It's this weird motion you have to do. Put your finger on the cell and move your finger left." And they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, cool." I'm like, "Yeah." It's like it's always humbling when all these things we take for granted in our little bubbles, we just assume everyone knows. No, explicit always beats hidden. It's
Yeah.
just that obvious. So for you, I would say just put a giant refresh button. Great idea. Just put it at the bottom though.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you have room, put a little refresh button at the top because I think people are used to web browsers having a little refresh button up there.
That is true. That's a good point. Yeah, and that is of interest. I think even in the browser on your phone, it has that as well. So that's a good point of like, okay, what are people using every single day, like on their phone? Like, what are some common paradigms there that are like in your face, visible?
Hmm.
Any other
Yeah.
like
So
liquidy glass thingies that
oh
you have
yeah,
design
I
wise?
just
Yeah.
sent you a screenshot
Uh,
of iCircuit on Mac, just converted to a Mac 26 app, and I want you to see how horrific the toolbar looks as the default experience.
oh no.
Um, yeah, and it's not. It's
Yeah.
it's usable, right? Everything functions, but from a design point of view, I'm just like, oh my god, I need to spend a while to fix this toolbar up and make it look modern. And I want you to see this because in a week I'm going to show you what the redesign looks like, and I want you to have a nice visual comparison so we can uh, decide whether I did a good job or not. But I just want to make the point that like some of the controls got grouped by default. Apple has a lot of implicit rules that aren't documented anywhere about when it decides to glass group things. Some buttons look good, other buttons look absolutely terrible because they're my own custom drawn icon, and Apple keeps changing the stroke width of things in the OS. So mostly I'm trying to switch everything over to Apple's built-in system images, its
Mhm.
built-in icons and all that kind of stuff. But the things that I have not converted over look absolutely terrible. Apple also does this thing on glass where the windows aren't transparent. They're not picking up the colors of the things behind them. What they are doing is picking up the color of your background wallpaper. No matter what's actually behind the window, the wallpaper colors come through to your window. And
Mm.
it's a little bit weird because anyone can have any colored wallpaper. So when you're testing, does my app look good? You have to. I actually have a little thing where I can cycle through all the different background colors on my desktop. It kind of stinks as developers. We can never have like a nicely personalized computer because I'm always messing with settings to like test out different environments. But I'm constantly cycling through. So you'll see. Um, Maybe you could even post this picture if you want, but I'll describe it like things that used to just be a nice neutral gray. Mac was always this beautiful black and white operating system. I still love that aspect of it. But things that used to be gray and shades of gray on Mac are now very colorful because they're
Mm.
picking up the colors of the background. In the case of the image I sent you, there's a lot of blues. So even like text boxes that in the old days would have just had a nice dark background in dark mode or a white background in light mode are now picking up colors of the background. So not only do we have all these layout considerations, toolbar buttons are bigger, they need to be changed in shape, they need to be grouped. Now things are just color schemes need to change too, and the way you present colors needs to change. And so I think the Mac version of iCircuit is one of the hardest ones for me to redesign. The iOS ones were a bit easier because iOS naturally, uh, it hasn't changed as much as Mac in terms of how visually things have changed. Yes, the buttons have changed, the sizes have changed, but as long as you're using native controls and you take a little time to clean it up, everything worked fine. On Mac OS, oh boy, no, things are looking quite different, and they're assaulting my senses of style and design and all those kinds of things. So I'm having to spend a bit more time than honestly I would like, but you got to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because if you go into your macOS settings, there's appearance, and then there is tint window background with wallpaper color, but it doesn't do
Mm-hmm.
anything for me. I really can't see a difference. I tried light mode and dark mode. I just don't see it.
You'll
And
start
that
seeing it when you're writing Mac apps.
I guess I'm just looking at like the different like built-in ones. I'm like, I just can't, like, I'm
Apple
toggling it
has
on
some of
and
the
off.
most
I'm like,
conservative apps. Yeah.
yeah, maybe
You
there's
got to
not like
look to
letting
some
it
of their
come
more
through.
modern things. Like if you look at Icon Composer, that's
Oh.
probably one of their most modern apps that they've released.
Mm.
It's just tricky. It's good because like apps can always use a little design refresh from time to time. But as our standard complaint, it's always annoying to have it forced upon you.
Yeah, like iMessage like does it, but it's like so subtle. But then like you can if I go down to a dark region, like it is darker, but yeah, it's very fascinating. I think there's all these little things to now consider that you didn't have to consider before. And that's what makes the game interesting at the end of the day, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the good news is I think it's going to look gorgeous with the new design. But I have
Nice.
to keep telling myself that because it going back to your other point of the Mac version goes back to Mac OS 11, and that's still very much the kind of gray world. And testing Mac versions is almost harder for me than testing iOS. iOS, I just keep some old devices around. I refuse to upgrade them, and easy peasy. It's easy to test out there. Mac OS, it's really hard to run old versions of Mac, especially versions pre the Intel split.
They don't
So
want you to. They don't want you to.
they really don't want you to, but if you look at my sales, people are using easily versions 3 back, 4 back. You know, I wish
Mm.
everyone would upgrade to iOS or Mac OS 26 day one, but they just don't. So I personally want it to look great on Mac 26, so I'm going to adopt the Mac 26 lifestyle and style. But, just do my best to make sure I don't make it too ugly for everyone else.
Yeah, and it's been a while now that I've had Mac OS 26 and iOS 26, and like I said before, my review is they're fine. Like it's fine. It's like it's fine. I think there's things that are upsetting about it, and then eventually like all the apps will update and it'll be all more cohesive. All these things, it's fine. It's like not. It's not. It is a big change, but it's also not like the. There's a lot of change, but like all of the cheese didn't move. Right, some of the cheese is moving around.
Hmm.
Um, but inherently it's still if you had Mac OS, whatever it was before, and you upgrade to 26, it's gonna look different, but pretty much it's all gonna be exactly the same. Like it's gonna be pretty a few buttons will have moved here and there. There are the only thing I will say about Mac, I've said it before for Mac OS, there's so many rounded corners.
Oh my god.
Guys,
Do you, have you
gals,
noticed
stop it with the round. Why are there so many rounded corners in my Finder window? Why?
So forever in UI design, the way you show something as being 3D is you assume that there's a light source in the top left. So things pointing to the top left get highlighted, things pointed to the bottom right get dimmed. And that's the classic embossing effect. Look at Windows 95. That's the effect they use. White for top left, dark gray for bottom right. Now on Mac, A, everything has a roundy corner. B, there's two light sources now, James. Have you noticed that? There's a top
Yes.
left light source and there's a bottom right light source. So
Hmm.
now it's not just one place. And so bottom left and bottom right are your dark regions. And it's weird. On iOS, they make the argument that like there's a cool parallaxing effect, and as you rotate it, the light source moves. It's so subtle that you can't even tell. So
No.
the net effect is now you have to design assuming that there's two light sources. And I don't know how to do that because honestly, for the past 20 years, 30 years, we have had since Windows 95 one light source in the top left. And at Apple, I mean, they have a million design documents about glass, but they don't even talk about such a basic thing. The 3D effect is now a two light source effect. And I
Yeah.
don't know. It's hard, it's hard, man. I want to be a good designer, but when they keep changing things and not explaining why and how and all that, and or tell me what is the power of the light sources? How does it move? Will it ever move?
One of the most interesting things you can do in Finder today on your Mac OS is open up your Finder, and then on the
Mm-hmm.
left hand side, you'll have this weird, it's on most of the apps, but it's like this weird, circle thing that's like recent, shared, favorites, locations, right? And it's like a circle, and then there's like a scroll view with circles inside of it that's like omnipresent all the time for some ungodly reason. There's so many scroll bars that I can see right now in front of my face. And then there's the middle window, which is like the actual document picker. But then if you have the preview up on the right hand side,
Oh, you had
like
the preview on. Oh,
I
you
have the
crazy.
preview on, but then there's like this, it just looks, there's like a line, and like that line can move and it can cut through.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are so many shades of
Mm-hmm.
weird things happening that I really can't understand. The line goes from top to bottom, which then cuts through toolbar items. And
Yeah.
then again, like you said, and like then there's like I'm looking at a button that doesn't do any. What is that button? It's just a chev that doesn't do anything. It's like like again, and what's really weird is in the toolbar, there's like the grouping of like how do you want to view it, like show as icon, show as this,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll, if you get it, make it smaller, it'll go away, and yet there's still tons of space for it to like come out. Like I just have a thing that says GitHub. It like it's not taking into consideration like
Well,
so many things. It's so fascinating.
it's because the title of the window is now in the toolbar. That's a very
Hmm.
iOS thing. And actually, it's been really annoying on iOS. We talk about the toolbar or navigation bar buttons becoming bigger. The problem is the titles of your windows. There's like no room for them now. I think there's a
Mm.
whopping like 120 pixels worth of functional space for your titles now. So any page that you had that had a long title gets clipped constantly or just disappears. The problem is in an app like Finder, where people can have very long file names or directory names, that clipped title has to get shoved into the toolbar now. It's a
Yeah.
unified toolbar and window bar. I hope at some point people realize that that was a mistake and we go back to actually having
Well,
actual title bars separate from the toolbars, but it's not going to be a mistake. It's not going to be fixed for many years.
my favorite thing, which you could do an iCircuit and then on this thing, if you're in Open Finder, if you're
Mm-hmm.
here, then do
Mm-hmm.
View, Customize
Mm-hmm.
Toolbar.
Oh yeah, that's built in.
I know it's built in, but Frank, if you've
Mm-hmm.
never done this, like
Yeah,
if you're a
it's the
Windows
best.
user,
Yeah.
this is, if you're a Visual Studio user, this is probably like this is the thing. But legitimately, there is like 28 different things that you can drag onto your toolbar. You can add spacers, a flexible space, different
Mm-hmm.
views, search, and then there's like you can set different icons and you can do show different things. It's just like wild the amount of things that you can like drag and do this and then that and all this other stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm fascinated because I set mine up for the previous Mac OS based off a video that's like someone's like, hey, like do this because this is like what would be
Oh.
good, like only show this or that. So I'm like wondering now, like actually would it be better to set it up differently in macOS 26.
Probably. Yeah, and if you're not a Mac user, the one nice thing about the standard toolkit in Mac is any app that uses a native toolbar gets native toolbar customization. That's been here forever. It's one of my favorite
Nice.
features of Mac. So if you run into an app where you're like, there's way too many buttons up there, I never use that button, or it's missing a button, check out the customized toolbar. Chances are that you could actually just add the button you need there.
Actually, it's really interesting. Notes, view, customized toolbar. Oh my God. Terrifying. All right. There's so many. 100% terrifying. All right. Well, that's our little journey. That was not where we're going to go today on this. I had a really cool topic about how prompting is dead. But
Oh.
no, you got to wait. You got to
Is it?
wait,
Okay.
Frank. Yeah. Next week I will be recording live from, well, actually, when this comes out, I'll be presenting probably. I'll be recording live from the Azure Dev Summit in Lisbon, Portugal. I will
Wow.
be there recording. So I probably won't have as great audio, but I'll run through AI and it'll be much better. And we'll figure out the timing on that. So that'd be fun. And
Jet
then by the
set
time
man.
yeah, I should bring something. By the time I get back, I will be, actually, I'll be in, I'll be leaving Portland, Maine when the next
Cool.
podcast comes out. So, anyways, I hope that
You'll be on location,
I'll be
reporting from the
on
locals.
location. Yes, exactly. But that is going to do it for this week's Merge Conflict. So I hope you enjoyed this fun liquidy glass design challenge. Listen how it's going. Your application going to mergeconflict.fm. Until next time, I'm James Montemagno.
And I'm Frank Kruger. Thanks for watching and listening.
Peace.